7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. I am here again with you on No Soundbites Allowed, and I'm happy to be here with you. Just fixing my sound. Now, as some of you may have noticed, we are a little bit delayed today in starting off because our guest was going to be Dan Pokorak. Dan Pokorak, who is the lead singer of the band Adam Ate the Apple. You were just listening to a little bit of their music at the intro. And Dan's been on the program before. He is an avid individual, avid in terms of the politics and following the issues of the day, especially about healthcare, gun control, many issues. And he's been on the show before. He isn't I wouldn't call him a Democrat or a Republican, probably leaning more towards libertarian, but most importantly, he's an independent. And he doesn't really assign himself any party. But Dan is, well, he's a good friend as well. And we do like him, we do support his band, and we do support him as well. And he was on his way here. He was delayed. He fell ill and was unable to make it. So that's why we're delayed in presenting the show. Sorry for that, folks. But we're going to carry on. We're going to move forward. And I hope everyone had a great time over at Speedy Fest. I just want to mention that real quick. Our friend Matt Cornwell was the opening act for Kansas at Speedy Fest. He did a great show with his band Labonte. I hope people drop by the Belmar Pub and the Park Diner. This is not a paid advertisement. They're all friends of mine. And I hope everyone had a great time in Broome County, in Binghamton, and seeing the band Kansas, seeing Matt Cornwell, his band Labonte, and just a great day overall. If you look at my Facebook page, you'll see that I have several photos of both the band and that day and many of the politicians that were there. And I do want to highlight, we're supposed to see Assemblywoman Donna Lapardo is finally going to reschedule her meeting with us, as she said, in person at the Speedy Fest. So we are expecting to have a date on that soon. We're expecting to be able to have Paul Battisti, one of the DA candidates, to show up on the program. We've been waiting since January. He again promised us that he's going to come on. We're still waiting. We spoke to Deborah Gelson, who's the Democratic candidate for the DA race, and she's mentioned that she has interest on being on the program. We look forward to speaking with her. The third candidate in that race, the now Libertarian Mike Korchak, who has been on the program before, will be coming back to do an interview with us as well. We look forward to that. And we've heard from Mayor Rich David of the city of Binghamton, who has an open invitation to be on the program. We've been trying to get him on for 3 years. He has mentioned that he has interest and he wants to come on again. And so we're waiting for him to confirm a date with us so that we can have him on. That being said, let me get into the issue of the day. What we were going to speak with Dan, and what I know is something that's very important in the public, and that is the shootings. Dayton, Ohio, El Paso, the Garlic Festival. We're hearing all kinds of feedback. I mean, it's been pretty bad. I mean, look at what happened to Neil deGrasse Tyson. Did you see that? I mean, he's getting backlash, lots of backlash. And why is he getting the backlash? Because he dared to make a tweet. He dared to step away from the liberal outlook, and instead of blaming the gun, instead of blaming the firearm and the amount of ammo that was used, no, he decided to point out a couple of facts, okay? He stepped away from emotion and went to facts. And what he said was very simple. It was a very simple thing. And we have it right over here as well. What he said was that the average in the last 48 hours over that same weekend, was there have been 500 medical errors. There were 300 people who died because of flu. 250 people committed suicide. 200 people were in car accidents. And 40 people died to homicide by handgun. And he's slightly wrong with that because it was 51 people in Chicago alone that were injured. I believe it was 3 or 4 people who died in Chicago over this weekend. And it's important. Now, people are very upset with Neil deGrasse Tyson because, and the article that I'm quoting here is from CNN itself, came out today, and it was at, what was it? It was 7 a.m. Neil deGrasse Tyson is facing backlash after tweeting about shooting deaths. And I have to ask you something, folks. What's wrong with what he said? Why is it so bad that when someone says there are other issues that are going on and we are emotionally attached to this, that there is so much hype on the shootings because of the media profile, the impetus from the media and politicians to try and sell fear? And I do mean they are selling fear wholesale. And I pointed it out in a previous video, but I want to point it out again. There is fear-mongering that is going on every time there's a mass shooting, and especially this weekend we saw it. And you have to ask yourself, why are people upset when someone says there are a lot of issues in their nation, and we can't become obsessed with just one issue, especially an issue that affects so few people? And that's not to take away from the tragedy that was and is the shootings that occurred. That's not to say that that's any less important, but it is also to say that there are many issues we have to deal with in this nation. And we have to have an unemotional response to them. And we have to weigh them and say, hey, let's answer all of these things. Let's deal with these things. Why is it that the 51 people who were injured, the 180 people in Baltimore that have been killed because of gun violence, the 314 people in the city of Chicago in the last year that have been injured or killed because of firearms? Why are we not talking about this? Why is this unimportant? The 138 people who have been injured and 30 people killed in the city of Detroit over the last month and a half, since the beginning of summer. And I highlighted links to all of those in a previous video where you can see this for yourself. The Baltimore Sun, the Chicago Tribune, news media outlets are constantly talking about this. And one of the key things they're constantly talking about is the only solution that is being offered by Democrats, the only solution that is being offered by liberals in the far left is a double down on the same thing we've been doing for the last 3 decades. I was on the news media today. I was talking to WNBF Talk Radio, which is a local Broome County news radio program. And I highlighted again, we can't keep doing the same thing we've been doing for the last 30, 40 years. Gun control laws don't work. And it's not because I'm saying that. It is proven fact. And yet we hear people constantly using President Trump as if this is a brand new thing, like there has not been a mass shooting in America ever before, that people are trying to make this seem like this is an epidemic. In fact, we have people who are like Anthony Brindisi, Congressman Anthony Brindisi, who are actively fear-mongering. I mean, actively fear-mongering. Anthony Brindisi, as being quoted in the Rome Sentinel, Brindisi joins call for Senate vote on gun background checks bill. And they start off, and I want you to be very clear about this, folks, because this is important. This is important about what's happening to you and what's being done to you. Anthony Brindisi is using emotion, just like Cory Booker, just like Beto O'Rourke, Amy Klobuchar. They're using emotion. They're hyping up and using the fear and the anger of the American people to try to get a partisan idea passed. Because if you look at what Anthony Brindisi is saying in the Rome Sentinel, he's asking for background checks. That doesn't save anyone. That wouldn't help anyone. To be exact and to quote this bill very clearly, because I want to make sure we get it right for you folks. Now, what does this bill do? It would prohibit a firearm transfer between parties unless a licensed gun dealer, manufacturer, or importer first takes possession of the firearm to conduct a background check. Well, guess what? Background checks were done. These individuals, the El Paso shooter, the Dayton shooter, the Garlic Festival shooter, this didn't stop them. You could have had a 30-day waiting period. It wouldn't stop them based on the time it took them to take action. We have seen people like in Islamberg, New York, where 4 20-year-olds, less than 20-year-olds, kids younger than 20, former Boy Scouts were building bombs. It didn't stop them either. The answer is not the background checks. That's not going to make you safer. But you know what? Anthony Brindisi, Congressman Anthony Brindisi, decided to say, hey, in his quote, and I am quoting him from the Rome Sentinel and his statement, now Dayton becomes the 251st mass shooting this year. Let's stop right there. That is a bald-faced lie. That is fear-mongering. It is not the 251st. There have been only 22, I'll say it again, 22 mass shootings in America in 2019. Is one too many? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Is one life lost to a mass shooting too many? Absolutely. But it's pure fear-mongering to say that 251 mass shootings, it did not happen. It does not exist. Anthony Brindisi is lying to the public to get a partisan goal pushed. Because the reality is, if he is being honest, according to the AP, according to ABC News, according to Northeastern University, there have been, and they base their numbers on the FBI, the reality is that there have been 22. And the reality is that over the last 4 decades, 40 years, America averages 20 mass shooting incidents per year, with an average of 100 people being killed per year. Now, I want that to be very clear because that's 1.4% of all the mass shootings in the world. America is 56th in the world out of 86 countries that we know of that have mass shootings. Okay? That's the reality. It's not an epidemic. It's not racism. This is a reality that we have to live with. It's been happening since the 1946 that we've had mass shootings in America. They're not growing. They're not more or less. They're about steady. And guess what? More people get killed in Chicago since the beginning of this year. And every year, more people die in Chicago, in Detroit, in Baltimore than in mass shootings every year. That's right. There are over 290 people who, I believe it's 293 people in Chicago, according to the Chicago Tribune, that have died. And there are 180 people, homicide victims in Baltimore, according to the Baltimore Sun. Think about that. Think about that. But Anthony Brindisi is saying, hey, wait, there's 251 incidents. No, there aren't. Those aren't mass shootings. Some of them are gang shootings. Some of them are drug-related. And those have an impact. There are suicides. Absolutely. 2/3 of all gun violence is suicide. But that's not a mass shooting. That's not the fear-mongering. It's not. None of the things I just mentioned, mass shootings, suicides, gang violence, drug violence, none of that is resolved by a background check. None of it. So he's trying to sell you on this fear that there are 251 incidents. Oh my God, it's an epidemic. You have to pass background checks, which will not affect a single incident. Whether it's a mass shooting, whether it's drugs, gangs, whether it's a suicide, background checks have nothing to do with that. Will not prevent them and will not prevent you, the public. This is what we're getting from our politicians. This is the best thing that Anthony Brindisi can offer, is fear. And I'm very upset about that. And we have other people in the media who are talking, who are also out there making comments, like Rihanna. Rihanna slammed Trump. This is an article from the Huffington Post, a far left organization given, but reaches millions of people. Rihanna slams Trump's seeming inability to call mass shootings terrorism. Let's get this right. You want to say that President Trump isn't addressing mass shootings? Really? Because he was just on today, national address, talking about rejecting racism, white supremacy, hatred, bigotry, and mass shootings, and denouncing them all. What do you want him to do? He's the president. He's not a police officer. He can't go around arresting every single individual, nor should he. No one should. And he's not going to demonize every single American, 160 million Americans, for owning a firearm. No one should. But that's what Rihanna is asking for. But I ask you something. Where was Rihanna? Where were the rest of the Democrats when Fort Hood happened? And Fort Hood, which happened in 2009, in 2013, members of Congress were demanding that President Obama classify Fort Hood as an act of terrorism. And that's something from ABC News. ABC News on February 13th of 2013 was mentioning how Congress was fighting to be able to classify the Fort Hood shooting as an act of terror. And yet no one complained. I didn't hear the Democrats. I didn't hear Rihanna. I didn't hear Cory Booker and the rest screaming about how, oh my goodness, President Obama won't call it a mass shooting when it is an act of terror. He called it a workplace event, which harmed individuals. Individuals at Fort Hood who were injured in that shooting, a shooting motivated by religion, a fanatical religious individual, Nadal, who went out and committed terrorism on U.S. soil. And all those people who were affected by it couldn't get medical benefits because it was called a workplace incident, not an act of terror. And they were denied medical treatment. And I didn't hear any of the Democrats who were screaming about, well, you got to call it domestic terrorism. I didn't hear them saying that with Fort Hood. They were calling it an act of workplace violence. And I'm sorry, that's not what it is. And you want to know what the difference is between Fort Hood, El Paso, okay, I'm getting messages here. Bear with me, folks. Okay. You want to know what the difference is between El Paso, the Garlic Festival, Dayton, and Fort Hood? Fort Hood was based and centered on a fanatical religious belief that hoped to tear down the United States government. You didn't get that in the other three. They were acts of individuals, vile individuals, who need to be denounced, and I will not name them because they're looking for attention. And these individuals at the Garlic Festival, at Dayton, in El Paso, these individuals had warped views, worldviews, individual views. They're sick individuals, mentally ill. And these individuals weren't out there to put in a new political system. They were there to kill people. They were killing people because of their own personal beliefs, not a organized individual organization like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, which was Fort Hood. That's domestic terrorism. And mind you, no matter what you want to call it, it's a mass shooting. It's a violent act. It's an act of someone saying that the only answer is to kill innocent people for no good reason. Not that there was ever a good reason to kill innocent people. And we have to think about that. Rihanna's out there. We have celebrities out there trying to tell us about how to protect ourselves. Rihanna, everyone isn't running around with bodyguards that are armed to protect them from crazed individuals. That doesn't happen for the average American. The average American has to be able to protect themselves in the best way they can with an armed response to armed attacks. Now, I know that if you wanted to listen, you could even check out what was said by the Gun Owners of America. And Gun Owners of America today, August 5th, announced that a statement on the tragic shootings of El Paso. And they highlighted one of the great things is that 16 times, according to the Centers for Disease Control, 16 to 100 times more often is a gun used to protect people's lives than to take lives. And that includes a Houston man who was using his AK-47 to defend himself from 5 people who were invading his home. A woman, a petite woman from Maryland, who chased 3 burglars out of her home because she was brandishing an AR-15. Okay, so let's understand this. The firearms aren't the problem. And it isn't racism that is the problem. Because these mass shootings were happening. Columbine wasn't because of racism. San Bernardino wasn't because of racism. Orlando shooting was not because of racism. It was because these are sick, twisted individuals who decided that at the end of the day, there is no answer other than to kill innocents. The shooting that happened at the congressional baseball field, shooting of Steve Scalise, the representative, that wasn't based on race. That was based on a warped view of Democratic and Republican politics. We even know that the guy, looking at El Paso, maybe he was very far right in his views. Guess what? The guy in Dayton is very far left in his views, apparently. We can't look at mass shootings based on what political preference they are. These aren't people who are running for elected office. We're not trying to elect mass shooters. Do you really care what the political opinion of someone who is so crazy as to say, hey, the only answer in life is to kill innocent people? Do you really want to take that person's opinion for anything? Anything? These are sick, twisted individuals, and to assign them political beliefs, whether it's on the left or the right, is wrong. And I can understand. Perhaps I've emotionally gone into that realm myself at times. And I'm sure others do as well, because we have so much emotion charged in this, which was what Neil deGrasse Tyson was saying in the first place in his tweet on Sunday. We have to separate that emotion. We're not getting answers because we're so wrapped up in the emotion, because the news media, because of celebrities like Rihanna, because we're seeing people who are attacking because they want a political belief. And they're fear-mongering like Anthony Brindisi. That's right, Anthony, I'm going to call you out again. Like Representative Anthony Brindisi, who's so busy. He quotes, there were 251 incidents. That is so factually wrong. That is an absolute lie. And the only reason for saying that is fear-mongering. It is absolutely fear-mongering. I don't understand it. And I've seen that quote before. He's copying a quote that's been said by many, many of the far left who are active anti-gun, anti-Second Amendment advocates. But at the end of the day, if we were to let those people have the control and take away our firearms, America de facto would become Venezuela, a nation so unable to be able to defend its own people, or rather the people to defend themselves from the government, that the government goes out and kills 7,000 of them over the last 2 years. It's not well reported, but it's a fact. And you can check the New York Times and the Washington Post and any of the news media. It is a fact that it's estimated that about 7,000 people have been killed by the government of Venezuela because the people have no ability to defend themselves, which is the whole purpose of the Second Amendment. To be able to defend yourself against people invading your homes, like was done in Texas, like was done in Maryland. To be able to defend yourself from attackers and to defend yourself from the government. This is what the Second Amendment is about. And when we lose track of that, when we get absorbed by the emotional confusion, the confetti out there that says that, hey, this is all about racism. No, it's not. It's about white nationalism. No, it's not. It's about President Trump because he didn't say something. No, it's not. And I truly believe that. And it's not because Trump is a great guy. It's not because I'm going to have a beer with him. It's not because I'm a Republican and I'm somehow blinded. Those are all the answers. But those are answers because you don't like the emotion. You emotionally, if you're saying, well, Mike, you're black, so you just don't know. You sold out. That's an emotional response because you don't like the answer I'm giving you. These are facts that I'm talking about. And if you don't like that, that's okay. You don't have to like it. And if you disagree with me, that's okay, if that is based in fact. But if it's based on your emotions, I don't care. I am concerned when I hear Kamala Harris, who is running for president, saying that she wants to go out and forcibly take firearms from people. You want to come into people's homes and take their firearms. You want to forcibly do what Venezuela is doing, attacking its own citizens. That should send a chill up everyone's backs. No, I'm not an advocate for white supremacists. I'm not an advocate for racism. I denounce those things. I don't believe in those things. But I also believe in people being able to defend themselves. I also believe in people being able to speak. And these are important issues. And that's part of what I believe Neil Tyson deGrasse was trying to get across. Neil deGrasse Tyson, excuse me. What he was trying to get across. Separate the emotion. Understand the issue as it really exists. And what really exists is that at the end of the day, we don't have the answer to stop mass shootings. We haven't had it since 1946. We didn't have it 10 years ago. We don't have it today. And we definitely know that one of the things that won't do it is passing another law, a law that has no impact on it. We know that because we saw President Obama pass 32 executive orders. We know that there are 22,000 laws that regulate, restrict, or otherwise ban firearms in America at this time from the local, state, and federal level. And none of that is protecting the public. Passing one more law that doesn't address any of the issues is not going to make you safer. That's an illusion. It's an illusion that's meant to do one thing, to give one partisan organization more power and to give you less freedom. Now, that's what I believe. You may disagree. Maybe you agree with Rihanna. Maybe you agree with Representative Anthony Brindisi and Cory Booker and Amy Klobuchar and Beto O'Rourke, who want to blame this all on one person, the president, because it never happened before, because that's the only reason why we've seen mass shootings and crazed criminals using gun violence. Maybe you want to be like most of the left media that don't want to talk about the problems in Baltimore, in Chicago, in Detroit, as well as many other places across the nation. And that is your right. But you know what? Take a second, separate your emotions from the facts, and realize that until we do that as a nation, we're never going to answer the question, why are people coming to the conclusion that the only answer is to kill innocents? The worst answer they could possibly get. The most dangerous answer they could only get. And until we can answer that, yes, I stand as a Second Amendment advocate saying you need to be armed, trained, and able to defend yourself. Armed, trained, and able to defend yourself. Because you never know when this is going to happen, and God forbid if it happens to you. That's the way I think. Maybe you disagree. I look forward to hearing your comments and to hearing your answers. And we'll be back again very soon. I hope everyone's going to be safe. Everyone's going to be well. And God bless America. And I'll talk to you all very soon. Thank you.